Hello and welcome back, everyone, to another Sales Hacker webinar. Maybe this is your first one. Maybe you join all of these, but welcome. We are very excited for the next hour. I know there's an incredible amount going on in the world right now. So hopefully you can take this hour, kick back, learn some things, and also ask us questions if you have any. So really quickly, before we dive into it, and I introduce my awesome guests. So a couple quick housekeeping matters. So number one, these are all recorded. So if you need to jump off, your dog's biting your leg, your kid's screaming, whatever it is, it's all good. We will send this to you within 24 hours. And then number two, this one, I think we had just shy of 1,000. So there's going to be a lot of people rocking with us today. It's certainly always more enjoyable for myself and our panelists when we know who we're hanging out with. So there is a chat feature at the bottom. If you don't mind going on now, introducing yourself, company, title, anything interesting you want to say about yourself. It's more fun for us. And then if you do have any questions, so we got a meaty presentation packed with a lot of data-backed strategies. But if you have any questions that are like hyper relative to your business and things that you're struggling with, there is a Q&A feature different than the chat. Please put them in there. I'll be kind of minding that, and acting as the voice of the community. So we'll try and weave them in if the questions make sense. And then they're a little off topic. We'll save them for a little bit of Q&A at the end. But yeah, without further ado, let's kind of dive into it. What we're talking about is nobody buying. I think a lot of us are feeling this pain right now since COVID. I know a lot of companies are struggling. So we're going to try and present 3 data-backed steps to pivot your sales strategy. I have 2 perfect guests to wrestle this with me. I am joined by Jim Donovan, the VP Global Sales at PandaDoc. Jim, welcome, brother.
Thanks so much. It's great to be here, Scott.
We're excited to have you. And also joined by Mike Palladino, who is the head of global sales over at PandaDoc. Mike, welcome.
Thank you, Scott. Happy to be here, man.
Love it. And really quickly, just for all the listeners, so they can kind of relate to your story, I like to ask this question. Jim, can you give the quick, superhero origin story of how Jim Donovan became Jim Donovan?
Sure. 10,000 foot view. I actually started out my career as an investment banker on Wall Street, and I randomly was in the World Trade Center on September 11th when the first plane hit. It actually led me down this momentarily very lucid path that I realized I hated investment banking and I hated Wall Street, and I wanted to get closer to sales and more into sales. And so I instantly pivoted my career away from IB. And I started down in telecom sales, which led me to wireless and the mobile industry. The mobile industry led me to media. And I was able to sort of thread SaaS all the way through there until now I've arrived at PandaDoc, where I am absolutely in the SaaS sphere and loving it. So really happy to be here today talking to you about all things proposal and document automation.
I like it. It's a impactful story, man. That's crazy, and one I think many can relate to is that moment, whatever it is that sparks this, like, hey, not liking this old life. Let's switch things up. That's cool, man. Mike, superhero origin story of Mr. Mike Palladino.
Yeah, absolutely. So similar to Jim, started in a different industry. I was working in construction, doing project management and operations essentially until I was about 25 years old. Definitely loved the business and enjoyed what we were doing and interacting with people and, production. It was kind of similar to sales management in a way when you're dealing with finite resources and producing, but it was a small family business, and I didn't think that it was the career path that I wanted to take for my personal journey. So started over in my mid-20s and took an entry-level SDR position at a startup in Boston. It's Turbonomic, formerly VM Turbo. It was just immediately turned on by the energy on the sales floor, specifically in SaaS, inside sales. And noticing the crew of sort of founding client-facing folks who were, the people I really respected when I joined. It was like, I want to be a part of a crew like those folks, and sort of missed the wave at that first company, but ended up finding PandaDoc, which was exactly what I was looking for to sort of cut my teeth as an AE and potentially get involved in leading people. And it's been a fantastic journey since.
I love it, man. So did you work your way up at PandaDoc from AE?
I was actually an SDR. I was hired as one of our first outbound SDRs many moons ago under a different leadership regime. However, worked myself up, started taking on, more revenue targets, more teams, and ended up in a scenario where I'm able to collaborate with the likes of Jim and our C-level folks and really build the business. So it's been a pleasure to wear so many different hats and learn so much.
That's incredible, man. I love that. A lot of people on this, we sure have SDRs, AEs, managers, all trying to, go up that path. So that's cool, man. You made it happen. So quick shout out to some of the people joining us. We got Rebecca, we got Carla. Francis says, congratulations on the Series B funding. Congratulations to both. We have Shirley, Karen, Natalia, Todd, Stephen, Carol, Brian, goes on and on. Lots of people hanging out with us today. Let's get into the meat of it. Let's get this rolling, guys.
Absolutely. All right. So folks, here's our overview. We mentioned a few data-driven tactics for overcoming some of the issues we're seeing in the marketplace. The way that those have manifested are some of our revelations from recent report found on some of these insights. We're going to talk about some industries that we've noticed growing and how we've activated against that trend to capture some of that demand and continue to hit our targets. Talking about getting our product in front of the customer faster and trying to remove any blockers you possibly can from a connectivity with your prospects. And this is kind of a new, I don't want to say cheesy, but in sales sometimes we can be cheesy. ABT as opposed to ABC. It's always be training. And that's so we can remain our always be closing mantra and mentality by trying to follow what we see as working during a tough time in the market. So without going too much further, let's just get into it. So this is actually coming from data that we've captured from PandaDoc's user groups. So what we're seeing is that the percentage of time, the percentage of increase in the number of deals at the end of June, 38% increase during the time of the heavy parts of the pandemic. So this is an interesting spike. I mean, a lot of folks are seeing demand increase. However, seeing logos and seeing transactions increase in the user group was interesting data to see. Exiting June, we also noticed PandaDoc's a great mechanism for tracking the buyer's journey and the buying committee. So previously we've seen it would take 3 to 5 individuals on a buying committee being looped into a PandaDoc in order to close something down. And that actually dipped substantially during the pandemic, going from 5 to really closer to 2 folks being involved in the decision-making process at the bottom of the funnel in our sales cycles. And lastly, the highest average completion rate PandaDoc customers have ever seen. 67% of documents sent are being closed. And before you go crazy on a conversion rate like that, we got to remember that these proposals are being sent mid to late funnel. So we should have a pretty good close rate. But 67% is a major increase compared to the 45 or 50% that we've been seeing previously. So a lot of this, I think, points to some trends that Jim and I have noticed in our buying funnel. Mostly that, at least from my perspective, that buyers tend to be much more pragmatic during a situation or market behavior that we're experiencing currently. Instead of people really kicking the tires or starting an evaluation early in an awareness phase, folks are ready to talk turkey when they come to the table and ready to actually be very productive in an evaluation. So we leaned into that quite a bit. And while ASPs for us, not really showing much on this slide, our average sales prices have definitely decreased a little bit just due to the, budget restrictions and some of the facts that we're just closing more deals. However, it seems to me that folks are ready to spend in situations where they know that ROI is going to manifest, even during wartime or whatever you want to call it during a pandemic. So, Jim, I don't know what you want to add to this slide.
Yeah, I think the one that stands out to me the most that I've been feeling as I'm out there in the cycles is the middle stat on just how we've moved from 5 people reviewing to 2 prior to sign off, right? I think that's really powerful. That means that while this is PandaDoc data and this is really helpful metrics around how our business is shaping up, I think this applies to all of your businesses out there, right? I think you're all experiencing and feeling less decision makers in the buying cycle, which is sort of an important opportunity for you to get out there and prospect even more so you can pull more into that funnel right now when you know there isn't as much resistance to change or making decisions. And I also think a lot of that comes to the availability of resources, right? We're all sort of in some remote semblance. We're all accessible. And also, people are picking up the phone now more than they ever did before because they're looking for connection. They're looking to interact with people. So I think all these stats are powerful. The middle one stands out the most to me. And I think it's a signal to all of us that we need to take advantage of this time. Not take advantage of a pandemic, because that sounds in and of itself, nefarious, but take advantage of the circumstances, right? We're all in these same circumstances together. And Pal, I know you and I have talked about this, right? Is productivity is through the roof, meaning we're all working so hard. So, paying attention to these stats and leaning into them, that's a way that you can go from hard work to smart work. And I think that's what we all need to be doing right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love this. This is and so just to clarify, we have a clarifying question. So some of this data is from a report that was done in March, correct? And then some of it, like the 38% increase in number of deals, comes from June.
Yeah, we should have made that more clear. March through June is where we got data from. So basically, the onset through sort of a little bit of the loosening up of COVID.
Perfect. Thank you, Rachel, for the clarifying question. There we go.
Absolutely. So Jim mentioned something interesting there. Take advantage, right? That sounds like a nefarious statement to an extent when we're talking about like a pandemic, but it's completely true. It's actually more paying attention to what's working and really leaning into those things, right? So if we're going to have less folks in the buying process, then yes, let's get more folks in and follow that type of strategy. That's going to be consistent with some of the other things that we've done to try to maximize our revenue production in these months. So COVID hit, right? We were definitely thinking mostly about people, our customers, our employees, the world at large. In fact, just a quick aside, we added a pillar of our cultural code, which is empathy, to really lean into this, both internally as a business with our customers and with the people that we interact with on a daily basis. So that was our first step, right? But then we did need to consider the people that work for us and how we can continue to grow the business and make sure everybody has a job, right? So we started to lean into new industries. Again, talking about taking advantage or really just paying attention to how the funnel is performing. We were seeing an influx in logos, specifically in EDU, in the education space, right? So as we're noticing this demand, and of course it's logical, our solution is paperless. It can be, an asset in remote workloads. So as more companies or businesses or schools in this case are moving into that remote capacity, we noticed this massive boom, right? So what did we do? We leaned into it, and we tried to really kick the door down and chase that opportunity, because who knows if that will go away under different circumstances. And what that turned into was really one of our most and only, well, not only, but initial outbound vertical strategies that we were able to implement by paying attention to our inbound data, enabling our team very quickly to react to this new demand, and really kick that open. So it served in two ply. One, it was a great way to follow the data and continue to close more deals in an industry that seemed to be growing, but it also really was a straw that broke the camel's back in our outbound motion, and now has really focused all of our client-facing teams on the ability to go out and hunt for stuff as opposed to waiting for it on the inbound side of things. So new industries were huge. 15% of our closed won in June and July. Again, these are ops that were created throughout pandemic but closed in the summer months, were attributed to EDU. And even more specific, Jim, what do you think? Half of that probably came from a single representative who really chased this dog down and got himself familiar with specializing himself with that vertical, and got a lot of easy wins there that contributed to overperformance in some of these summer months.
Well, and actually, if I could, right there, right, is you mentioned, Pal, listening to the data, and that's exactly what we did. The data told us, hey, you're getting a lot of MQLs from this industry. But not only that, this particular individual, Quincy, he's a terrific team member of ours that Pal's referencing. We listened to him too, right? So we were able to listen to the data, but as it shows on the screen here, people first. What was our team telling us in that moment was equally powerful and equally loud as what the data was telling us. And if you've got your team and data pointing you in a direction, listen to them both, because they're not lying to you, right? If Quincy is telling us, hey, there's something here, and the data is pointing to it too, it was very natural for us to say, hey, let's chase after this vein and get as much oil out of the ground as we can. And then simultaneously, while we were working on that, we, let's call this, I think I shared the term with you, Scott, fracking, right? In the oil industry, we understand that fracking is drilling into the ground and then sending another drill in a different direction to just hunt for that oil. Well, as we were uncovering the education vertical, we just happened to frack and stumble upon, we were very close to actually penetrating the healthcare vertical at the same time, which if we didn't open our eyes enough, we might not have realized. But the start of COVID made us do something very real. It really put us on our heels and made us open our ears. And I'd say, coming out of this today, it's a very important strategy to listen, right? Listen to the data, listen to your people. They know what they're talking about. So, and Pal, I'll turn it back to you to go over our free product launch.
Yeah, no sweat.
Sorry.
Yes.
Sorry, if I can jump in, because Jim, I think you described fracking to me in a really great way on the pre-webinar call. Can you go into a little more detail, because I think it's a brilliant strategy that I think every BDR team should be using right now. Can you break it down, just oversimplify it?
Absolutely. At the simplest 10,000 foot view, all fracking is very much how you think about the oil practice of, again, sending a drill down and then going in different directions. Imagine at the end of a single closed won event, that is somebody that you spent a lot of time, talent, and energy on. And chances are, if you just use that latest closed won piece of business to inform where to go next, there is a prospect outside there pretty close by. And so I use the term fracking to say, for each closed won, we should generate 10 prospects that are competitors of that business. And it can be as simple as you just close an HVAC company in St. Pete, Florida, where I live, and you could Google HVAC St. Pete, right, if you want to keep those leads local, and just come up with those 10 companies that also do that same exact practice and reach out to them and say, competitors just like yours are using our service. Would you like me to explain how, and see if you could also, get equal value from us? It's a really basic tactic, but I'll tell you what, people love to know what their competitors are spending money on, and it works. So I encourage everybody to use it.
I love it. I feel like fracking is going to become a sales buzzword in under 6 months. It's coming. And Jim Donovan, trademark.
I'll take it. Thanks,
Nice,
Scott.
Jim. It's etched in stone here too. It seems like we're recording, so that'll be great. All right, so moving on to the second aspect here, the free product. So we talked about removing blockers, between our prospects and the solution, right? when demand maybe is easy and you're not as concerned about some of the things that might be happening in the marketplace, it's easy to rest on paywalls or difficulty actually getting into the app so that you're forced to engage with sales. But we knew that navigating through a difficult time, it would be great to actually just get PandaDoc stuck to a ton of people, whether they're on a paid basis or not. And we go back to people first, right? Like this is actually a valuable offering to the market in a time of need, right? So again, empathy and trying to take care of people. That said, taking advantage of it to an extent, we do know that these folks will end up in our funnel in some regard, right? They're going to get value from PandaDoc or they're not. We're going to educate them on how we can solve some of their problems. Our tool is very, very well suited for expansion and upsells from a product standpoint. So we knew that this was a no-brainer. And when you see here tens of thousands, we're talking about tens of thousands of folks. I think it's
40,
almost how many?
40,000.
40,000 folks ended up on the free e-signature plan that we released during the onset of COVID. And while that number is astounding, it's actually directly responsible for how we crossed the 20,000 customer threshold just recently, right? A number of these free e-sign folks ended up in funnel in a non-monetized capacity, and through organic and now direct activation against these lists to try to add value and expand, we're seeing our logos increase in a major way as well. So the free product was just another example of how we got creative during a time of need, and it's definitely served us volumes, and we still have thousands and thousands of folks that we can address in the future now as well. Maybe their budgets come back or whatever it may be, and we're in a better position to service them, and the market's in a better place.
I couldn't agree more. I typically refer to this launch of our free product as alchemy, or the ability for us to convert gold. I want to keep going back to this people first though, because what I was so inspired by when we released the free product was our CEO, our CTO, our CRO, all of our leadership with the how they went about rolling this out. They actually, they answered the question of what is the right thing to do first, not what is the easy thing to do or what is the profitable thing, what is the right thing to do. And in March, when the pandemic was starting and we were all being forced into a remote stance, our CEO knew at his core that it was absolutely the right thing to do first. And the secondary questions that had to be answered of how are we going to do this, and we have to change our talk tracks and everything else. He understood that to be, we'll figure that out because it's the right thing to do to put people first. That's leadership to me. I was inspired by that. And I think it's really helped our messaging as we're talking to our partners. While yes, all joking aside, nobody wants to be taking advantage of the pandemic, but folks, we've been in it now for 6 months. All right. So we have had to adjust to this, and that doesn't mean we can't all still thrive together and succeed and be promoted and have career growth inside of the pandemic. In fact, I'm thrilled to be at PandaDoc right now because we are hiring, right? We are growing career paths. And I think it's a true testament to what a good strategy that's focused on people can do for you at a time when you need it to really deliver. And obviously we're in that time. And then the last thing, obviously, is our process. So I'll go back to you, Pal, on how we updated our process.
Yeah, I mean, we already kind of alluded to this to an extent with our Always Be training, but there are plenty of process changes that took place here, whether it be, expectations of how our buyers are going to behave, right? Like the free e-signature plan itself to a seller was a bit scary because that's the product that folks were actually transacting and closing revenue against. So there were changes like that. Other process changes might have been, definitions of certain leads that we might need to update to try to address things in the future or based on other indicators. But really, it was the training aspect, I think, that was the biggest process shift for us. And again, from a people first, people-centric attitude, whether that's to educate our customers or educate our sales folks to address verticals or personas in a specific expert way. The biggest update to not only Jim's arrival on the sales team, but also some of the changes that are required during COVID, was substantially leaning into enablement resources on a weekly basis, whether it's just your run-of-the-mill role plays or a very, very specific vertical persona-based approach. It's essential that during these times where we're leaning into changes in how our markets are behaving, that we're fluid and flexible in how we enable the team or enable our processes to follow.
Yeah, I love this. Is one of my favorite things I've seen unfold in the last 5 or 6 months is that always be training. We definitely, think about yourself like an athlete. An athlete trains in the off season as well. They keep improving their craft and their skills. Salespeople are no different. So great, let's keep moving.
Yeah, I mean, this is some more visual data to kind of support some of the vertical discussions that we've already been kind of attacking here. Education was really the first one that we saw massive demand shifts and impact in our funnel, but healthcare was another one. And I think this actually lends some credence to the flexibility aspect and changes to processes as well. One small requirement away from a fantastic accident here, right? Like, we were basically just looking for a thumbs up from our product team to commit that we were actually HIPAA compliant, which it appeared we were. And fortunately enough, we checked off that box, and we were able to kick open another vertical. So as you can see here, the staggering impact on global education. I mean, why wouldn't you take advantage of these market trends, right? And going back to the people first as well, listening to the sales team, listening to your funnel, being relentless to the finish. One of the benefits of working in a more agile startup environment, it's difficult to make decisions when you don't know how to do something, right? We're all trying to figure something out here. But I can tell you now, in my experience at PandaDoc and with the successful startup leaders I've seen in the past, those ones that have some mixture of data-driven analysis and listening to the anecdotal evidence are the ones who are solving problems faster, leaning into their problems and actually fixing things with great results. So yeah, I mean, finding these adjacent industries, even still today, HIPAA really in healthcare was only the last month that we've really kicked this door open. So we're still following the same tactic of trying to pay attention to adjacent verticals and take advantage of that demand.
Yeah. And I think the other thing to call out here too is it's equally important to remove focus on non-revenue generating activities so that you can actually shift the bandwidth where the money's coming. That again seems elementary, but you'd be surprised how much all of us, if you just, again, a quick tip, look at your calendar and just go through the meetings that you have lined up for yourself next week and ask yourself, is this meeting relative or relevant to me hitting the goals that I am at this company for? If it's not, you might find that you can reclaim upwards of 40% of your own bandwidth. What would you do with an extra, 12 to 15 hours of your week returned to you, right? And my sort of imploring request is do that for yourself. You have to do that right now, especially have to be focused right now. And just as much as uncovering these new verticals was about listening to data and people, it was also about getting all the other crap out of the way so we could actually focus on that data and focus on those people. And it's really hard to do. You have to be intentional about it, and you have to be methodical about saying no to what is not driving revenue, and then really lean into where the money is actually coming from.
Love it. And quickly, if I can jump in there, guys, we've got a great question from the community here. Sam, thank you for the question. Sam wants to know, what are your learnings from education and healthcare? These have been, doing well for you guys. That's a broad statement, but like buzzwords, language they use. There's so many different things.
Yeah.
Jim, you want to take that?
I want to help here because I learned something really unique in this. And quite honestly, I learned it through listening to one of my account executives and learning through him, which essentially was, there are particular states. For example, the state of New Hampshire, out of the 50 states, is the state that has the highest requirements around privacy. And so what Quincy really taught us was if we just knock down New Hampshire, we'll have met the burden of proof for all these other states as well. And isn't that a fantastic way? Talk about working smart and not working hard. We carried that across the finish line. We noticed our opportunity in New Hampshire. And now we are just systematically going state by state now that we have FERPA confirmed there. And we're actually able to celebrate and say, hey, we're already compliant with the most stringent state in the union. Do you want to talk to us as well? And that really puts us in a power position. It takes you from needing to sell value to inherently, making your value known. And then it also emboldened us as we started to think about getting into the healthcare space a little bit more. Candidly, we had some failures as we were going into the education space. And so we were able to say, okay, what did we just learn from that? Let's not make those same mistakes in healthcare. And so we were actually able to sort of do a better job of crafting lists for our healthcare verticals and coming up with campaigns for those. But again, just going back to the second bullet there, I'd say drop what isn't working and get to what is. That's always good time spent.
I love that. Those are the hyper tactical gold nuggets that I love. Can you imagine handling an objection? Someone says, oh, what about security or compliance? And you just drop, well, I'm sure you know how stringent New Hampshire is. We have a bunch of customers there, so we're all good. I love it, man. Thank you for sharing.
And who would have thought it, right? I mean, who would have thought it would have been New Hampshire out of all the, so kudos.
There's one other distinction that I found pretty fascinating, or was just enlightening for me, is there's a big difference between public and private institutions when it comes to education. We were, following our typical playbook of land and expand, that's worked for us in terms of getting up to like a global procurement and then having a global deployment once you've already beaten down a few departments. We learned that in specifically in public schools, it's the township or the county that actually owns the budget on all the tools that are being provisioned for these public schools. And basically, if you can kick one down, then you can frack the rest within a region because where the budget holder is. The other thing too is that these tech communities within public EDU are not as archaic as you would think. They actually communicate with one another, even in different counties and different budgets and different spends. So once we ended up on a conference call in the state of New Hampshire saying, hey, we have this awesome tool, PandaDoc, that's helping us with remote work. It was like wildfire after that. So interesting learning from like a budget holder standpoint and trying to get decisions made.
It's huge. That's huge. I love it. Let's keep it rolling.
Sure.
All right. We are at our first poll question here, Scott.
Let's do it. We'll launch it now. All right. So yeah, we want to know how many new verticals have you connected with since COVID? Without looking, gentlemen, what are you going to guess here? Close your eyes.
I'm going to say more than one.
All right. We will keep it going. We'll go 5, 4, get those votes in, 3, 2, and 1. All right. So it looks like results are 40% are doing about the same, which is interesting. 7% are not sure, 31% more than one, 21% are at least one. So this is interesting to me. Everyone's, what are your thoughts on this, Jim? Everyone's kind of, the large majority are about the same.
Yeah, that actually, it's funny, Scott. The moment you said that, I was almost disappointed at first, right? But then it makes perfect sense. We are in the middle of a pandemic. It probably doesn't feel like a moment in history where you should be doing a lot of experimentation and discovery. But I think that's actually what we're trying to bring today forward as a recommendation of a strategy is perhaps it's exactly the time that you need to be experimenting with entering new verticals. Because if not now, when you have all this excess bandwidth and productivity where we're working remote and not commuting and these omni-channel approaches are actually working, when else would you evaluate a chance to break into a new vertical? So if you're one of the folks today that said the same, I would encourage you to go back and see, are you missing opportunity inside your company to potentially find new veins and new pockets of revenue? You might be.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. That is some interesting feedback. All right, so we're on to the second aspect, getting customers to see our product faster. I already kind of spilled the beans on the free e-signature plan, so I don't think we really need to go too much deeper on that. But Jim, you're mostly responsible for our toll-free and SMS strategy, so would love for you to enrich this slide a little bit with some of your context.
Sure. So I'm a big believer. I've been doing, some semblance of inside sales for 20 plus years now. And one thing I've learned is that prospects have one thing in common. No matter how they prefer to be engaged, they all only want to be engaged according to their preferences. So that might mean for some it's email, for some it's phone, for some it's text message. And as a SaaS provider, I think oftentimes we feel like we want to sort of mold them into our sales cycle. However, toll-free and SMS are great examples of that omni-channel approach that I was talking about, where you can actually meet your prospects according to the contact methods that they prefer. And then if you watch what happens when you create preferences according to ICP, the leads will just start to flow and fall into you in a way where the volume will almost outweigh your capacity in a healthy way. So it doesn't just need to be toll-free and SMS. You need to have something like Drift or chat. A chat element needs to exist. You absolutely have to have sales, cadence software of some kind that you're using to augment as well. And then, last but not least, don't forget that follow-up matters, right? It's so easy to just assume that everybody is so busy that they just didn't get back to you. But we all know that 80% of sales are made after that, somewhere between that 5th and 12th outreach. And unfortunately, so many of us stop after the 3rd. So, use as many channels as your clients will access. There is obviously scale, and you don't want to invest past what you can afford. But and then also just look at new channels. SMS is not new, but not everybody is taking advantage of it or understands how to take advantage of it. I'll just paint a really quick picture for you on this. I personally believe there is no hotter buying signal than a reciprocated text message. Okay, so what that means is, Scott, let's say I'm fortunate enough to have your mobile number and I'm trying to sell you PandaDoc. You go dark on me. If I text you and I say, hey, Scott, it's been a few days since we connected. I just wanted to check in on you and see how things are. First off, if I see that got read, that's exciting, right? Moreover, if Scott responds to me and says, oh, hey, I've actually been thinking about following up. I've just been super busy. Great. Now I'm back in that reciprocated sales cycle, and I've just used, a brand new method to try to get them back engaged. Meet people where they are, I think is really the message there. And just remember that some people are still, using old school telephones to get things done. And some folks prefer email, and you are absolutely capable of doing both.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. There's a few points I want to highlight on that. It's about showing up where they like to be engaged, and also just going where the noise isn't. And an example of this, like we're hiring right now at Sales Hacker, and I got 200 emails, 50 LinkedIn in-mails, and 1 phone call. So that phone call is going to stand out in a really big way. So it's also about standing out. One thing I wanted to kind of press you on, Jim, there, SMS.
Yes.
Let's talk about the rules of engagement really quickly.
Yes.
Like when is it appropriate? Are your reps like getting an email like that says, hey, it's all good? Are they confirming over the phone, or what does that look like?
Great question. So there are different regulations on who can send and receive SMS by state. So it is important for you to check your local laws around it. As a way to get not around that, but as a way to qualify it so that I protect myself and educate my team on how to do it legally. As long as you're on a recorded line and you ask the question early on of, hey, what's your preference of how you want to engage? They'll often tell you it's usually a mobile phone of some kind is a default preference. And if they are willing to give you their mobile contact information, it's the perfect moment to say, oh, great, listen, I do a lot via text. are you comfortable receiving texts from time to time as well? They'll tell you right there on the recorded line. If they say no, do not text them. That can result in serious problems for you. I have, in I guess now 8 years of leaning heavily into SMS, not one time have I ever had somebody say no. I've always had somebody give me their mobile number, and I've always had somebody say, yeah, sure, feel free to text me. That doesn't mean they always respond, but they at least give me the permission to text them. And to your point, Scott, you do want to seek that permission.
Totally. Yeah. But you're also right in the sense that, like, our buyers are incredibly busy. I know for me, it's easier if people text me out. It's just like, yeah, let's get rid of that and move on. I love it. All right. Let's keep it rolling.
All right.
The other thing too is if you get to the stage where you're texting somebody, very good indicator for a deal, or at least your relationship with that champion. All right, we got another poll question here. How are you increasing deal velocity during the pandemic? So this one's about speed.
All right, let's go ahead and launch that one. We got the votes coming in. All right, the Nostradamus hat on, guys. What are the predictions that we have for this? What do you think is going to win?
You know what? Going off of what we just were talking about, I'm going to say creating new communication channels. I think everybody's listening to me right now, Scott. Pal, what do you think it's going to be?
I think it should be monitoring and basically performance managing, but all of these are pretty valuable. I think this is going to be pretty split.
Hey, listen, before we get the results, just a quick reminder to everybody. If you get to your lead in under 5 minutes, you're increasing your probability of close by 90%. So hopefully you're right, pal.
Yeah. All right. We'll stop that one now. All right. Mike, you won, my man. 40% monitoring, improving speed to lead. 19% automating process with digital workflows. 31 improving lead scoring or implementing lead scoring. That's quite high. That's the second runner-up. Creating new communication channels. Cool. Surprising. What you guys thought? Mike, you nailed it.
I mean, I think it's important to really pay attention to performance and data when market trends change, right? So it just seemed like that would be a shoo-in. But I'm actually not surprised by the improved lead scoring either. We actually have some content here. This is something that we've done ourselves. So I think all of these are actually related. You're either trying to remove friction points, speed up efficiencies, or pay attention to what's working and leaning in there. So I think they're all kind of related. There's no real wrong answer here, right? Yeah. But I think the next slide is actually about lead scoring here. So I'm glad that number 2 on here was improved lead scoring and routing. So we implemented a super startup version of lead scoring and very simple. 1 panda face, 2 panda face, 3 panda face for weak to strong leads, right? So this at least gives us an idea of how to prioritize our time and make sure that we're activating against what at least our systems are telling us will be the best performing leads. And it allows us to really lean into activity performance tracking as well. I remember, Jim, in the first few weeks of the pandemic, Jim came through with an important homework assignment, which was basically to build out your own outbound list of what you might want to prospect against. And while it was a great exercise for practicing outbound, it was also designed to actually give folks some activities to do, that will be helpful in the future during a time when everybody's working remotely. So relentless focus on that activity and paying attention to inbound certainly made us better at outbound. Like when we talk about those fracking efforts, EDU, while the lead scoring isn't always going to tell that picture, it will help. At least help aim your gun or aim your whatever you want to insert here. But ultimately, it's about actually paying attention to the trends and trying to frack those, right? Also, tracking activity will help you just manufacture your month. We talked about Omnichannel. Like, I love that approach of like basically increasing the channels with which sales reps can pull levers to try to attract buyers or communicate with buyers. But also, from a methodical standpoint, if I need this many calls to create this much pipeline, to create this many stage 3 deals, to have this many closing calls, to send out X proposals, the beginning of that type of a funnel is activity based. And lead scoring is one way to help folks prioritize good activity as opposed to just task oriented call volumes per se.
I couldn't agree more. I worked for a sales leader for a long time, and he had a mantra that stuck with me to this day. Very easy mantra: sales calls work. That was it. He used to say it over and over again: "His sales calls work." For me, activity is to pipeline as what pipeline is to revenue. So exactly what Pal just said is, activity is the one controllable element as a seller and as a sales manager that we can impact, and we choose whether or not we engage or don't engage on activity. You can't develop pipeline without activity, and you can't have revenue to close without pipeline. So they're leading indicators of one another, and they're absolutely the best motivation to give to your team when they are nervous, distracted. If there's political unrest and you're trying to get your team focused, activity is a great way to say, hey, stop looking at all your notifications. Turn the news off, right? Focus on work, because we can control what's happening here. We certainly can't impact everything that's going on around us right now. And if you focus on all of that, you might really, get distracted and depressed and take your eye off the ball. Also, activity is a great way to have fun, right? You can get into activity jams and power hours and create a lot of contesting around who can actually make the most dials or who can actually get the most demos set. And so it doesn't have to be this negative thing. In fact, just like training, I think a lot of times when people think of training, they oftentimes they would say, oh, what's training about this month, or what do we need to go over this month? And you want to change that mindset to, what do we get to learn about this week, right? And it's the same thing with activity. It's not this thing I have to do. It's, I have a job, and I'm fortunate enough to have a job, and I get to do this activity. And right now, especially when there's 11% unemployment, isn't that motivating and powerful in the U.S. alone, just to see that all of us right here, right now, we're still fortunate enough to have our job. So, leaning into that activity for me has always been a no-brainer. And I would encourage anybody that's starting out in their sales career to know something, that most sales leaders like myself are looking to those that can do that activity, because that we want to go to you and ask you, how are you being successful? Talk to me a little bit more about your sauce. We don't look to the person that's not doing dials and not sending emails and not cadencing leads for that feedback. We actually only typically look to the people that are doing activity for feedback. So I hope that's a helpful tip as well.
Indeed. This was obviously crucial for us as well with releasing that free plan as well, so that we could try to differentiate the behaviors of those non-paid logos that were kind of in our funnel. We had to differentiate a bit. So lead scoring, big time help. All right. I think this is our last poll. And this will lead us into our discussion about trainings here. But how many trainings and role plays are we doing per month on our client-facing teams here?
Yeah, I've done a similar poll before. I know it's shockingly low.
Yeah,
shockingly low.
Scott, do you guys you like role playing? Is it a part of Sales Hackers culture?
So it's certainly part of Outreach's, our parent company's culture. Sales Hacker, it will be. I've been an army of one managing partnerships and revenue for the last little while. We are just currently hiring, and we'll be role playing a lot. But role playing with myself, it wasn't that fun, and I started getting this dual personality. It was like a whole thing. So
a bit of identity crisis. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I'm a huge fan of role playing. I think it's really a good time.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So just as kind of predicted, so 1 to 5 trainings or role plays per month is pretty low. 28% is 0, that hurts my heart, man, big time. And 6 to 10 is 10%. Gentlemen, thoughts on that?
it certainly pains the heart as well, but I'm not surprised to see this, especially when we're, Scott, I'm sure you can relate to this as well. When you're wearing a lot of different hats and moving quickly in a startup environment, like these are the one things that can fall off at least my calendar pretty easily from a priority standpoint. But I've learned that just the appearance of being there for the team is extremely important, and that my knowledge of actually being in the trenches gets better and better as I'm actually personally taking part of these types of role plays. But it's really like just going to the gym, like professional athletes, they're still spending tons of workout time in the gym, lifting weights and practicing, even though they're the best in the world. And I think there's a correlation there. So it really comes down to building muscle, and the only way that you can really do that is reps. And the more practice or at bats or jump shots, whatever it is, whatever metaphor you want to use, the only way that you're going to improve what you're currently doing today is by practicing. So as we've added more and more training, not only is the connectivity and the energy on the sales team like ramped up in a major way, but even our most tenured AEs, are actually learning stuff from folks who, might be a little bit greener or just come from a different business and have a new perspective on things. So my mantra has always been steal everything that works and make it your own. And the only way you're going to really maximize that effort is by practicing as a team.
Amen.
Totally agree. Yeah, we're lucky at PandaDoc. We do it twice a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays. We have role plays. I myself have learned the most about the product that we sell as a company and how to sell it from listening to my team members and how they position it. It's also a lot of fun, right? It's a super safe space for the sales team to try something out and watch us all go, no, that's not working, right? And we get to give real-time feedback to one another. We also get to interject what we know works from having listened to others in the past. And then if I could just give a tip on like, hey, how can I make role-playing fun? Adopt a personality, right? When you're role-playing, you can be whoever you want. So if you're being the prospect or the seller, take on whatever, makes you feel like you're enjoying yourself to get involved in it. Come up with an accent, come up with a backstory, but really get involved with it, because I think that's how you take role-playing from this exercise that you have to do to something that's fun and humbling, and it really does expand your knowledge.
Totally. Yeah.
Certainly
quickly want to
go ahead, Scott.
Sorry, just quickly, we have another great question. So Amanda wants to know, and I feel this because I've been in your position before. What are the best training resources out there for role-playing cold calling? I'm the only SDR in a small startup, so there's not much time, internal resources available. It's a great question, Amanda. Sales Hacker, we've got some stuff on cold calling role play. I know Josh Braun does some great stuff. There is a really cool company called Replays, actually, that will listen to your demos. They've got like a bunch of coaches, and they'll like give you live call coaching, which is pretty cool. Those are a few that come to mind. Jim, Mike, what resources do you push your team to consume?
Another great one is gong.io. Just follow them on any of your social platforms. Their sales specific content I find very, very valuable. But yeah, to answer the question directly, I would advise the SDR on the call to build it themselves. So absolutely lean on any sort of social or resources that you can get, plus your own internal knowledge. Again, steal from everybody and make it your own. And in my own experience, climbing the ladder in a startup, building something on your own and not asking for help can really go a long way when you're bootstrapped, right? That being said, there's a million ways to skin a cat. So really, it just depends on which one you think fits your own business model. Our own sort of internal sales enablement guru, Patrick Downs, he's even meddling in his own podcasts and content that he's been providing. So, perhaps that's a role for you, Miss SDR, who's out there in the stratosphere right now. But gong.io, definitely worth a follow.
One other I could suggest too, if you like it, is AAISP, or the American Association for Inside Sales Professionals. They actually have a whole module on role playing and feedback. And then the last thing is, this might sound cheesy and campy again, but we're sales professionals, so we get cheesy from time to time. Pal's suggestion of like write it up yourself, I love that. And then also like try to just role play with family or friends, right? Just try to see if you can get somebody that you love and care about to buy your product from you. And that's a great place to start, because if you can't sell your family and friends, it's going to be much harder as you get out there into the actual sort of real ethos. And trust me, you can sell your family and friends. Just try.
Love it. And sorry, Marcus has a great point here. I found recording myself and then going back and listening to it has helped immensely. That's huge. I remember doing that before the gong and chorus days, and you could usually self-diagnose pretty well.
Without a doubt. And going back to the workout or sports metaphor, that's like watching film, and it's another just crucial aspect of personal success. So I love that. I know we're getting sort of short for time. Fortunately, this slide here, we've covered ad nauseum, I think, with our training stuff, so we can keep it moving. But here are some questions to ask in order to overhaul, your strategy. Of course, people first, so that's table stakes here. But when it comes to industries, what industries are outside your ICP that are still growing today? It's a good way to get a short list for you to start figuring out some campaigns or strategies on how to activate against that type of an audience. Also, for the free product standpoint, how can you get the products to customer faster? How can you get it sticky? How can you get folks engaging with you? Are there any gains where we could do that anywhere in our funnel or customer journey? And of course, being nimble and agile, updating our processes. How can you drive more activity to find more customers with what you have today? I think these are the three major questions that we can look at from an introspective manner as we review our own funnels. Anything to add here, Jim?
No, just again, I think you hit on it. It really is people first. It doesn't matter what strategy you employ. If you don't put them at the top of the pyramid, you're in trouble. If you do, you can't go wrong.
Absolutely. And here we have some stuff that's provided from the Sales Hacker community. Scott, I don't know if you want to address this slide here, but
here's just some great resources that the Sales Hacker community has that you can double click into this, I would just check those out on your own time and keep the learning happening.
Awesome. That's all we have for prepared content. So we have some time for Q&A here. A couple minutes.
Perfect. 3 minutes. This is almost perfect timing. And of course, go check out PandaDoc. Thank you guys for sponsoring this. It was excellent content through and through. All right, here's a great one. Gary is kind of pushing back on this concept of adjacent verticals. Does going after adjacent verticals weaken your focus on specific product sales that you have invested money and time in via marketing and social promotion?
Great.
So it sounds like, chase two rabbits and you miss both, or whatever that saying is.
No, this is important. And actually, our marketing team had a really smart, almost fishing strategy for this, where we had a phased approach to discovering new verticals. And very much the first phase of that is the question of, is there anything here? So it's really about putting the hooks in the water and finding out, are there even any fish biting before you do fully commit to that vertical? And I think as you decide to make inroads into new verticals, that's a smart strategy. Marketing helped us look at it that way. The first phase would be discovery. The second phase would be true entrance and perfection of our talk track. And then the third phase would actually be the blow up phase, where now that we've got our feet under us and now we've got our process down, now we go after it. So it's a great question, because absent a strategy like that, you absolutely could take your eye off the ball, steal focus from your core ICP, and hurt revenue. But as long as you just have a litmus test of some kind, exploring new verticals shouldn't hurt your bottom line.
I have nothing to add other than I shared that same concern going into this time in market lows, where we've relied largely, our growth has relied largely on servicing our ICP, our ideal customer profile. We've done a lot of work to align our marketing strategy, our product, our sales motion, all of this to something relatively specific. So I was a little concerned. But that being said, I think it's it's almost, I keep going back to sports analogies. It's like everybody likes a pitch that's in their sweet spot, but that doesn't mean you can't hit a home run on a curveball, right? So like, I mean, you're not going to ignore those pitches. It's important to kind of learn and see if you can actually take those swings and knock them out of the park. And if you ignore that, you might miss out on some stuff. So from a high level, that was kind of the shift in my own mentality as we explored new verticals.
I like it. I like it. All right. That takes us to our time, gentlemen. We've got a couple more questions, but we will save those. We can start a thread on the community channel. Jim, Mike, if people want to connect with you, what's the best way to do that? LinkedIn?
Yep. LinkedIn, please.
LinkedIn?
Absolutely.
Cool.
LinkedIn is
amazing.
great.
Guys, that was so much fun. Thank you for sharing all your insight. We'll have to have you both back for sure. And to the community, thanks as always for the thoughtful questions. You guys were right there with us the whole time. So thank you so much. And I hope everyone has a fantastic rest of your week.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Alex. Bethany. Thanks, everyone.